What if I told you that one quiet afternoon, an 11-year-old girl did something that left hardened palace staff fighting back tears? What if I told you that girl never even met the woman she was honoring? And what if I told you that her simple gesture moved millions more than any royal ceremony ever could? By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why Princess Charlotte's tribute to Diana on her 65th birthday became one of the most unforgettable moments in modern royal history. Before we go any further, hit subscribe, because this story will stay with you long after it ends. The palace had planned absolutely nothing. July 1st, 2026 was supposed to be just another date on the royal calendar. Kensington Palace had no ceremony scheduled, no official portrait, no formal statement. Just silence. For nearly 3 decades, that silence had become tradition. Diana's birthday would come and go, remembered by the public, but untouched by the institution she once belonged to. But this year, everything changed. Something shifted. Something no one saw coming. Not from William, not from Catherine, not from any palace official. It came from a child, an 11-year-old girl who had never met her grandmother, but who carried her name like a quiet promise. And what she did on that ordinary Wednesday afternoon would leave even the most seasoned royal watchers speechless. Now, before we get to that moment, we need to talk about why Diana's 65th birthday carried so much weight. Because 65 is not just a number. It's the age she never reached, the grandmother she never became, the birthdays she never got to celebrate. Diana was born on July 1st, 1961, and she died on August 31st, 1997, at just 36 years old. She missed everything. She never saw William grow into the thoughtful father and future king he is today. She never watched Harry become a husband and father. She never met George, Charlotte, or Louis, the grandchildren she almost certainly would have adored. And she never had the chance to grow old, to slow down, to enjoy retirement, to watch her family build their own lives. For millions across Britain, July 1st, 2026 became more than a birthday that never happened. It became a reminder of everything Diana was denied. The years she never lived, the moments she never experienced, the countless lives she might have continued to touch. And that is exactly why this birthday felt different from every anniversary before it. For most of Charlotte's life, Diana has existed to her as a name, a portrait, a story told carefully by adults. She was born in 2015, 18 years after Diana died. She will never meet her grandmother. She will never hear her voice. She will never sit on her lap. But she carries Diana's name, Elizabeth Diana. And that name carries weight. Because Diana, Princess of Wales, was not simply royal by title. She walked through an active minefield in Angola to force the world to look at what landmines actually did to people. She held the hand of a man dying of AIDS in an era defined by fear and stigma. She insisted her sons see homelessness up close rather than read about it from a distance. She was and remains one of the most beloved figures in modern history. And for nearly 30 years, the monarchy has struggled with how to remember her. Too much tribute, and it felt like reopening old wounds. Too little, and it felt like erasure. There was no perfect answer. But on July 1st, 2026, an 11-year-old found one. Let me take you back to what happened in the weeks leading up to that day. It was Trooping the Color, June 13th, 2026. The royal family stood on the balcony, waving to crowds below, smiling, polished, perfect. But eagle-eyed fans noticed something. Princess Charlotte was wearing a 3-strand pearl bracelet, strikingly similar to one Diana wore throughout the late 1980s. The original, a Nigel Milne design created in 1988 for the Birthright charity, now belongs to Catherine, Princess of Wales. Catherine wore the authentic piece that same day, while Charlotte wore a matching version beside her. An unmistakable, deliberate echo between mother and daughter. Royal watchers noticed immediately. Fashion writers called it a quiet tribute. Few realized at the time this was just the beginning, because Charlotte had been asking questions about Diana for weeks. Not casual questions, real ones. Who was she? What did she like? Why does everyone still talk about her? According to sources close to the family, Catherine had been waiting for this moment. She never wanted to force Diana's story on her children. She wanted them to ask when they were ready. And Charlotte was finally ready. Royal biographer Duncan Larcombe has observed that Charlotte is now old enough to be told the fuller version of Diana's story. Not the sanitized one reserved for very young children, but the real one, including the parts that are difficult. That shift from protecting a child from a story to finally trusting her with it is not something the palace announces. It happens quietly inside a family, long before anyone outside notices. But on July 1st, that shift became visible. And here is where the story takes a turn that nobody expected. On the morning of Diana's 65th birthday, Charlotte reportedly made a simple request. She asked Catherine to tell her something about Diana that she had never heard before. Not a headline, not a biography fact, something small, something specific. Catherine is said to have paused, and then she described an ordinary afternoon from Diana's life. One of the many small, private moments that never make it into an official record. But what happened next is where the room fell silent. According to a source close to the household, when Charlotte learned that Diana used to press flowers between the pages of her books, a quiet, private habit few people knew about, Charlotte asked if she could try it herself. With flowers from the garden that very afternoon. The source described the room going quiet. More than one adult present is said to have been visibly moved. And one insider later said something that still echoes. It was the closest anyone in that house had come to feeling like Diana was actually there. Think about that. Not a palace tribute, not a carefully worded statement, not a curated exhibition. A child pressing flowers in her grandmother's memory without any cameras, without any script, without any institution telling her what to do. That is the power of legacy passed down, not through official channels, but through love. And here's why this matters so much. For nearly 30 years, Diana's memory has been managed from above. Curated statements, approved photographs, official anniversaries handled with careful institutional distance. But Diana herself never wanted that. She wanted to be a queen of people's hearts, not a portrait behind glass. In her own words, she wanted to be remembered as someone who cared, someone who touched lives, someone who made a difference. And on July 1st, 2026, none of that management was present. There was no institution deciding how the day would be marked. There was a girl asking her mother a question, and a mother choosing honesty over a rehearsed answer. Catherine has spoken before, if only in passing, about wanting her children to know Diana as a real person rather than a symbol. And this was that intention finally made visible. Not through a statement, not through a formal announcement, but through a single afternoon. Nobody planned for cameras. Nobody issued a press release. Nobody orchestrated a moment for public consumption. But those who were present described the scene as something they would never forget. Charlotte seated in the garden, carefully pressing flowers between the pages of a book, her grandmother's book, her grandmother's habit. And Catherine watching in silence with tears in her eyes. Now, let me tell you something else about Charlotte. She is, by all accounts, a remarkable child. Royal commentators have noted that Charlotte carries not just Diana's name, but flashes of her mother's warmth, the same direct eye contact, the same ease with strangers that made Diana so beloved. She has her father's steadiness, but her grandmother's spark. Ingrid Seward, editor of Majesty magazine, has observed that Charlotte's resemblance to Diana becomes more striking with each passing year. She has Diana's smile, Diana's confidence, Diana's way of connecting with people. And on that day, she showed Diana's heart. Because what Charlotte did was not about perfection, it was about connection. A granddaughter reaching for a grandmother she never had, using nothing more than a bracelet, a flower, and a question. And that image, tender, private, unguarded, was more powerful than any official tribute could ever be. But here is what makes this story even more remarkable. William has spoken in the past about wanting his children to know Diana as a person, not a headline. He described small moments at home where her name comes up naturally, unprompted, folded into ordinary conversation. And what happened on July 1st looks like the clearest evidence, yet that this approach has taken root. Not because a parent announced it, but because a child acted on it, entirely on her own terms. William's grief for his mother has been well documented. He was just 15 when she died, a heartbroken teenage boy walking behind her coffin in front of billions of people. That was a burden no child should ever have had to carry. But now, decades later, he is watching his own children learn about his mother, not through documentaries or history books, but through the stories he and Catherine share quietly, lovingly, without pressure. And on that afternoon, he reportedly watched his daughter press flowers in his mother's memory. And those close to him said it was the first time in years they had seen him genuinely emotional. So what did this moment mean, really? It was never about the bracelet. It was never about the flowers. It was about keeping a legacy alive, not through official channels, but through the people who truly loved her. Charlotte never met her grandmother, but she is learning who she was not through curated exhibitions or approved statements, but through the stories her parents share. Through her mother's gentle voice, through her father's quiet tears. And on that ordinary Wednesday afternoon, she took ownership of that legacy. She made it her own. And in doing so, she reminded us all what Diana was really about. Diana's story has been told in countless ways: documentaries, books, films, articles. But none of those captured her like this. Because Diana was not a statue, she was a mother, a woman, a person who laughed too loudly, loved too deeply, and cared too much. And Charlotte, a child who never met her, somehow understood that better than any biographer ever could. That is the power of love. That is the power of family. And that is why this story touched millions. There is a reason why this moment struck so many people so hard. It is easy to forget, watching the polished version of this family, that grief in a royal household is still just grief. The same shape it takes anywhere else, only carried by people the world insists on watching. William and Catherine have always worked hard to give their children a sense of normalcy. They have been photographed at school gates, at playgrounds, at family picnics, just like any other parents. But this was something different. This was a private family moment that somehow, inevitably, became public. Not because anyone leaked it, but because the image of a child pressing flowers for a grandmother she never met was too beautiful to keep private. And now the response. Millions of people across Britain and around the world shared the story. Comments flooded in, tears were shed, memories were shared. People shared their own stories of losing loved ones, their own attempts to keep memories alive, their own small, private tributes that no one would ever see. And that is the magic of this moment. It gave people permission to grieve, to remember, to honor in their own way. Because Diana was never just a royal figure, she was a symbol of hope, of compassion, of humanity. And Charlotte, in her innocence, reminded us all of that. Now let me ask you something. What if this is exactly how Diana would have wanted it? She spent her life breaking royal protocol, shaking hands with people others feared to touch, walking through minefields, holding dying men's hands. She never wanted to be a portrait behind glass. And on July 1st, 2026, a granddaughter she never met made sure she wasn't. Because Diana's story is no longer being carried by statements and biographies. It is being carried by an 11-year-old, learning it for the first time. And that, more than any palace tribute, is how you truly honor someone. Diana never reached 65. She never saw the granddaughter who now presses flowers the way she once did, wears her jewelry without being asked, asks questions no biography can answer. But she is there, in the stories, in the memories, in the quiet moments. And as long as Charlotte remembers, as long as she presses flowers and asks questions and carries her grandmother's legacy, Diana will never truly be gone. Because the chapter written by history may be closed. But the story of what Charlotte does with her grandmother's trust, with that name, with that legacy, that story is only just beginning. So now you know why an 11-year-old girl moved millions more than any royal ceremony ever could. You know why that moment mattered. And you know why it will be remembered for years to come. But what happened next involves someone we haven't even talked about yet, and that story might be even more surprising. If you've made it this far, hit like, because stories like this don't stay buried for long. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Diana never reached 65, but her legacy reached a granddaughter she never met, and that is something no time can ever erase. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.